and welcome to a special pre-record episode of Monday Night Football, the cabin fever edition, because we've been in this room for about an hour trying to start recording this show, and Craig's finally got a straight enough face for us to begin. You ready, Craig?
Not, but I'll try.
Okay, so we are here on Christmas Day, even though we know...
Christmas Eve.
Well, no. Yes, we are here on Christmas Eve, but this show is going out on Christmas Day.
Oh, we have a flux capacitor.
So we know that not necessarily many of you are listening live right now. To those of you who are, thank you very much for tuning in to Radio Saltaire and specifically to Monday Night Football. We are here today specifically because... Well, firstly, it's Monday and it's sort of in the title. But secondly, there's a big Edinburgh derby in a couple of days and we've got a weekend's football to provide reaction to. So we'll give you a slightly truncated version of the show. We'll give you sort of 5 minutes about each of the games at the weekend. We'll give you half an hour's derby preview, and then we will give you round about half an hour of a special interview conducted by Craig a couple of weeks ago, where I hope he was able to keep a slightly straighter face than he has been so far today, with Ian Murray, Hibs legend Ian Murray. So that will end the show. Prior to that, we'll give you reaction to the weekend right now. Let's start with Hearts. Sean. Hearts travelled to McDermott Park in Perth yesterday, and it would be fair to say the conditions were not ideal for a great football game. Would you agree?
It wasn't particularly conducive to good football, especially how exposed it is at McDermott Park sometimes with the cross-field winds. It never played into anyone's hands really with playing good football.
Okay, in terms of the team then, we speculated a fair bit last week about what changes Craig Levein would make, and I think I mentioned that Craig Levein had potentially created a rod for his own back in the Celtic performance and how well the team played when it was such a makeshift team and a different formation, because it then created, firstly, expectations, but secondly, people may be expecting to go with the same team again, and any changes that he made would be particularly highlighted. The obvious changes that he did make were John Souttar coming in to partner Christophe Berra in the centre defence, Michael Smith moving to left back, and Jamie Brandon dropping out. And we also saw Anthony McDonald come in to take the place of the injured Ross Callaghan. Firstly, what were your thoughts on those changes?
I thought they were the somewhat obvious changes. It's more like how we've seen Hearts line up for the previous weeks before the Celtic game, so it made somewhat sense to do it. I do think it did slightly disrupt the flow of the team compared to how we played against Celtic. We saw it certainly in the latter stages of the game that Michael Smith getting up the left hand side felt the need to always cut back onto his right foot, which I don't think we would have had as much with Jamie Brandon playing at left back, so I think that was a possible issue. The fact that Randall stayed in the right back position though is still seeing him flourish. I thought he was our best player by some margin yesterday or on Saturday. So they made sense, but at the same time I could have seen a likelihood where we didn't make those changes and we stayed somewhat closer to the Celtic game. I think the biggest thing for those being defensive changes is we got another clean sheet. No bubble burst, as Mark predicted. So it was good from that standpoint. I think, as I'm sure we'll touch on in a minute, the hardest thing was going forward with the play, building up from the back. It's easy to get the ball to the centre halves and then the full backs, but St Johnstone's press was making it harder for us to do that, so there was a lot more emphasis on long balls going up the park, which never necessarily played into our hands.
The game itself was a bit of a game of two halves, at least in terms of Hearts' presence within the game. First half, pretty even. I wouldn't necessarily say Hearts were the weaker side, but there was very little football played, as you said, and certain Hearts players that doesn't necessarily play into their hands. Second half, I thought Hearts composed themselves on the ball a lot more, and at least for periods of the game were hugely dominant, but couldn't find that goal. How concerning is that to you, that Hearts did have a lot of the game in the second half, but were unable to break the deadlock?
I think a lot of when we were working positions, we were getting it 20-25 yards out along the kind of edge of their box. They were crowding out the centre, so we were getting the space in the wider areas. But when we were working it there, as I said before, when we got to the left hand side, it was on Michael Smith to cut back and try and get a ball in. We weren't getting to the byline to cut the ball back, which was becoming an issue, because when they've got it flooded and the ball's coming in towards the defence, not coming back towards the penalty spot, it's easy for the defence to mop that up. Their centre halves, especially Anderson, was being quite physical yesterday as well, so that was playing into their hands with that battle. Look, I think Hibs will play in a fairly different way. St Johnstone clearly had set out their stall out with the conditions, weather-wise, how it was, so there's obvious positives to take from that game. The clean sheet is the biggest one to take forward. The fact that it's kept up an unbeaten run for us, which helps carry over momentum. But our game plan is not going to be anywhere close to that performance.
You mentioned Hearts' inability to create from wide areas. There was one gilt-edged chance in the game that I want to talk to you a wee bit about. But before we do that, there's a slight issue, it seemed, in the game yesterday with David Milinkovic and the way that he's utilised. He was utilised as a second striker against Celtic, and it worked perfectly. Yesterday there seemed to be points where he's in the middle, or certainly more central as a second striker, and there's players trying to create a yard out wide and trying to get a cross in, and either they're unable to create the yard because they've not got a trick, or the cross was not good enough at the end of it. And it did seem a wee bit like surely you'd rather have David Milinkovic in that area. Will Craig Levein maybe have to look at, for these types of games, the times where the Celtic structure and system doesn't necessarily fit perfectly with the task at hand, will he maybe have to look at trying to get Milinkovic out wide again more, and not, in him doing so, leaving you short of bodies in the middle?
I think possibly the biggest factor that limited Milinkovic in his play against St Johnstone was the fact that there was more bodies crowded out in the centre. So you weren't getting the joy of him making his runs through the centre or getting the bodies around him, because there was, for the times where Hearts had concerted pressure, there was literally 11 men in the St Johnstone half.
Yeah, because St Johnstone play a less expansive game than Celtic do, and they make the pitch much more congested to be difficult to break down.
Especially in the second half, when Hearts had the wind behind them, St Johnstone knew that if the crosses and that were coming in, it was going to be raining down on them, because the wind was a big factor. So they set their stall out from pretty much the beginning of the second half that it was, if they could nick a goal, great, but it was about staying solid at the back. So that did close off options for Milinkovic. I think it depends. Tynecastle's not the biggest pitch ever, so I could see the width playing more of a factor away from home than at Tynecastle. I think Milinkovic could possibly, as long as we're getting the bodies up and around him, that he would still profit from playing through the centre. In the game against Hibs, I could see it next time we go to Ibrox or Celtic Park, somewhere like that he could move out to a wide position. But I think for the Hibs game coming up, he could still play off the striker.
Okay, the one real opportunity that Hearts fashioned in the game was, you could argue, wasted by a bit of a sort of mix-up in communication between Kyle Lafferty and Michael Smith. It appeared Lafferty got his toe on the end of it, but was probably not in a great position to score, whereas Michael Smith would have been in a better position, albeit less of a natural finisher. How frustrating is it, firstly, that Hearts passed up a chance of that nature, and secondly, that that's the only real gilt-edged chance that we can talk about?
it is frustrating from the standpoint that we just never created too many chances. There was a flicked header from Christoph Berra from a set piece as well. There was one or two others, but nothing really to write home about. I can see why Kyle Lafferty hasn't expected someone to be at the back post, because I think that was the only time Michael Smith made that run in the entire game. So you can't blame him, especially he is a striker. He's going to try and put it in the back of the net. He's not doing it to try and take the chance away from someone else. But I think Michael Smith needs to be a lot louder when trying to shout for that ball. It's whether or not he's 100% confident that he can take that chance is the bigger issue. I think with a game like yesterday or like Saturday, the importance is Hearts focusing now for those type of games, because there is going to be games like that where teams set out their stall. We need to be concentrated on how we're the attacking prowess and how we're breaking the lines and where the opportunities are coming from, because that seemed to be lacking.
Okay, couple of final points in the game. One thing that stuck out in terms of the changes made, Isma Gonçalves came on after 86 minutes in a game where Hearts had struggled to score. As we mentioned, they're struggled to fashion clear-cut chances. Has he fallen out of consideration a fair bit now? And that in these kind of games where Hearts were not necessarily battering at the door, but certainly knocking at the door and looking for to find that one goal that everyone had the sense all game would have been enough to win it. Is it indicative that Isma has maybe fallen out of favour a little bit when he's not being considered until the final 4 minutes of a game like that?
I think he has fallen in the pecking order. However, I think there's possibly a thought in Craig Levine's mind that the winter, especially on a really windy, wintry day, is maybe not the best time for Isma. We know he's somewhat of a flaky character at the best of times. I don't think playing in horrible conditions is necessarily suited to him, so I can see why it was last 5 minutes, see if you can come up with something, especially with some of the shots he does that's aimed at the far post and just trying to get it across the keeper. If the wind catches it, he could have came up with something at the end there. Unfortunately, just never really got an opportunity, but I can see why he has fallen down the pecking order for this point in time. However, he did come on ahead of Cole Stockton, so there is that. I think it's no one is really commanding the positions at the moment. Kyle Lafferty done well against Celtic. I think that's what kept him in the team, but I still think it is somewhat up for grabs between all the strikers.
Okay, final point on the Hearts St Johnstone game then, and it's quite a polarising figure that I want to touch on. Prince Babin came in for quite a lot of criticism from the Hearts support yesterday, I would say. There will be varying opinions on how justified it was. I know that some people listening will think he was the worst player on the park and he should have been taken off at half time and so on and so forth. I believe there will be some others who will be slightly quieter, potentially, but others who think, well, he always puts himself there. He's always putting himself in the firing line. It did strike me that in a game like yesterday, Harry Cochrane's obviously very young and very inexperienced, but I thought the first half sort of passed Cochrane by a little bit, whereas Bouabin, although he was making mistakes on the ball at times, Bouabin seemed to be involved all of the time. He seemed to be able to get himself into the right positions to make interceptions or to take passes from his defenders. It just wasn't always the right option he picked afterwards. Where do you fall on Prince? Is he someone who just sometimes has the odd off day or takes too long to make a decision, but ultimately is trying to do the right thing? Or is he someone who is just not good enough for Hearts at this stage and Hearts should look elsewhere ASAP?
I really didn't think he's not good enough for Hearts. I think especially for anyone to really take that stance on him when we're so limited with options in the centre midfield is somewhat bonkers at this point in time. He is a trier. Yes, he's not the greatest centre midfielder Hearts have ever had, but he has showed that he has an adaptability to play multiple positions. Once again, he might not be the best in those positions, but he's going to try a lot harder than your average person who's going to be there. I think you saw it yesterday. There is one or two occasions where it seems like he almost cultivates that people to get on his back. That one on the edge of the box when he's running through, and you're thinking, just even if you can't get a shot away, just toe bash it, just anything, just do something with it. And he ends up just running without an idea and gets dispossessed. It's the things like that people fixate on and don't realise the majority of passes he got in dodgy positions and managed to find feet and open up the space for the fullback to actually move on from.
Does he suffer a wee bit in the Dimitar Berbatov type style, that he's got quite a languid, sort of loose style of play, and we know he would prefer to have a couple of touches on the ball, unlike Harry Cochrane got a lot of praise last week for literally one touch and move every time. It was one touch, it was out of his feet and it was passed on. Prince would rather have 3 or 4 touches before he does it. Does he suffer because of that, because it potentially looks like he's being lazy, because he just prefers to play at a slightly slower pace?
Not in my eyes, possibly in some other people's. I think the biggest thing of why he is one of the Boo Boys just now, though, is he is considered as being one of the biggest Craig Levein players. Played with him at Dundee United, got brought in, one of the first players to come in under Levein's directory football role at the club, and he's still here. I think a lot of people see him as a direct line to Craig Levein and having a go. So I think that's what you heard, audible gasps whenever the ball came to him, and I would say 85% he done a good thing with the ball yesterday, and yet there's still those gasps and groans every single time he gets the ball, which when 2,000 people are doing it, you probably can hear it on the pitch. I didn't feel that it was justified. As I'm sure you saw, I got fairly frustrated at the game yesterday, as I'm sure you did yourself, with the reaction he was getting. It's just, I didn't like any player getting that. But if Prince Buabin had been turning in the performances that Rafael Jelak has been putting in, I could understand it. Buabin's been nowhere near as bad as Jelak.
Okay. Yeah, I agree to an extent, and that it did frustrate me as well, because it's purely a thing of how is it conducive to helping him perform. Yep. And yes, there are times where you have to say, I'm sorry, he's just not good enough. But Buabin is a guy who you would have thought, that's the thing that surprises me, you would think that he would have earned more respect from the Hearts support than he has, because he's played in big games for Hearts, and yes, he's played in big losses, but so have a lot of guys. He's stuck around at Hearts, and he actually has shown a willingness to go in and play different positions. He could have sat out and said, no, well, I'm a central midfielder, I won't play at centre half. Mm-hmm. But instead he's gone in there and he's rolled his sleeve up and he's tried, and it is odd, the relationship between him and the Hearts support at this moment in time. I hope it can be resolved, but unfortunately it seems like we're just waiting on an end point at this stage. It seems like I think from Craig Levein's perspective, it would make sense to try and replace Buabin, firstly to try and improve the team slightly, but equally I think that relationship, like we got to a point with Robbie Nielsen's relationship with the Hearts support, just never really seemed like it was going to be resolved.
I think there has been a bleed over from the Romanov era, that foreigners are in line for getting it a lot tighter than a Scottish player or a youth player. It just, not that they get over the top criticism, but Harry Cochrane could have done the same thing Prince Buabin done yesterday, because he's viewed as a Hearts product and a Hearts youngster. People are willing to cut him slack.
Well, I think it is fair that younger players are cut some slack, but I do agree there are certain players who seem to have. I find Jamie Walker really frustrating to watch. There's a lot of other people who don't, and I can't understand why, if they do get so much frustration from guys like Buabin, and there's a few other players who fall into that category as well. Isma Gonçalves is very much one of those characters as well. I think Isma Gonçalves is as likely as Jamie Walker to come up with something wonderful at the end of it, and yet gets cut a lot less slack, I would say. But anyway, I think we'll leave it there, because we'll maybe get onto these characters again when it comes to the Derby preview. Craig, I'm going to say cards on the table right now. You went at Easter Road yesterday, were you a part-timer?
No, I was not.
So we'll do just a very, very quick bit on Hibs Ross County. The main point has to be a very good 3 points.
Very good. Going for what I've seen, it should have been much more should have been much more comfortable than what it actually was. The first, there seems to be an inability as well to keep clean sheets. The first goal, is a bit disappointing with regards to. But then you can see it as obviously Ambrose is playing right back. Naturally, he's drawn into the middle when a cross ball comes in, and he just gets caught completely underneath it, and then he's quite slow to react to get out to Chris Eagles before he crosses it in. But no, very good 3 points, especially when you look at the other results as well. You know, Rangers slipping up, Hearts only getting a draw. It puts a little bit, you know, it means now that going into the winter break, you know, it's unlikely that Hearts will be above us in the league, which is, you know what you're looking for, but it's, you know, it's something to, given the run that we've been on recently, you know, it's a good point, and the fact that we're now only 6 points off Rangers. And obviously Aberdeen got beat yesterday as well, so you know, then there's teams capable of, you know, you've got Kilmarnock in there now. There's all these teams are capable of taking points off each other, it seems. So no, a brilliant win, given that our home form's been patchy of late as well.
Okay, so just a wee touch on the team. Ollie Shaw earned himself a start after his goal scoring heroics the last couple of weeks. Were you surprised to see him in for the full 90?
Don't think I was surprised. It's looking at Lennon, he's trying to find out exactly who his best pairing is. I mean, I think most Hibs fans would agree that our strongest team is 5 in midfield with the one up front with the 2 wingers and that trio of Bartley, McGeoch and McGinn. But then neither Murray nor Stokes nor Shaw seem to be that typical lone frontman, you know, like a Lafferty who is capable of leading the line himself, especially in games where we're going to look to dictate the majority of possession. You know, it's not like we've got McGeoch and McGinn aren't as attacking as like a Swanson would be, who would be linking up perfect with a lone striker. So no, I wasn't surprised. I think he's done well in recent weeks. I thought he was quite against Rangers, he was quite unlucky to get taken off as early as he did. You know, obviously he came on against Celtic the Sunday prior and done really well. Never really, obviously by the time we came on against Aberdeen it was game set match. Never really had much to do there, but no, he's, you know, Lennon said at the start of the season, you know, there was 3. There was Ryan Porteous, Fraser Murray and Ollie Shaw. And in my opinion, I thought Shaw was the furthest away from being involved in the first team, because obviously Porteous done well in the Betfred Cup, Murray done well at the tail end of last season. But no, he's definitely put the cat amongst the pigeons with who he goes with, because everybody would naturally go with Stokes. After Simon Murray's early form, folk would go with him, but now he's making his own case as well, so it's nice to have a bit of an option.
You mentioned this slightly patchy home form there, and over the recent period, I've noticed that there's always been, over the last 3 years with Hibs, through Alan Stubbs' tenure and Neil Lennon's tenure, there's always been speculation about the best system, and particularly the best system for a given occasion, and that a lot of people like the 3-5-2 still, a lot of people like the 4-diamond-2 still, but even people who like those systems, you mentioned the sort of 4-3-3 with the 2 wingers now, even people who like them don't necessarily think they're suitable for all scenarios, and that a lot of people think when you're playing the lower teams at home, as Ross County are, I mean Ross County are a decent side, but they now find themselves bottom of the league at Christmas, which is suggests they're not a great side. I know a lot of people, for example, when Hibs tried to play the 3-5-2 before, thought it was just too negative to play against lower teams at home. Neil Lennon for this game went with much more of a sort of 4-4-2 type shape. Do you think that is going to potentially be his formation to bully the lower teams at Easter Road from now on?
That's what I think we should be doing for the majority of games at home. Obviously you respect the fact that, you know, teams like Celtic, Rangers, Aberdeen have got, probably when you look at it man for man, better squads. You know, there's some at Aberdeen, Rangers, Celtic I wouldn't take at Hibs and vice versa, but you know, at home we need to be the team dictating the game, and I think we can do that a lot better with 2 strikers in the park. I think Stokes is a number 1. Like he gets a lot of criticism for Hibs fans at times, but you know, that's just that British mentality of, oh, he doesn't track back, he doesn't run about enough. You look at players that played in the Premier League, you know, and I don't like comparing, but down south you think of 2 players like Cantona and Berbatov, players who didn't run, didn't track back, didn't do the dirty work, but were, you know, technically 2 of the best footballers that you'll see in that league. I'm not trying to say Stokes is that level up here, but you can see his level of intelligence at times is so far ahead of the rest of his teammates, and he only works well when he's got a partner alongside him, and not as a lone frontman, because he's not got that work rate to play on the left wing, because Stevenson would just be far too exposed. So you need to find a system to suit him, because he's on his day. We've seen it. Like I say, I wasn't there yesterday, but by all accounts, a lot of people were saying that that's him. That was up there with his performance in the cup final. His performance in the cup final, we know what he can do. It's just getting the right system and personnel to get that out of him.
He's also traditionally a second striker, and I think that's the other thing that people, if he's no tracking back, people potentially look at him then of he should be occupying defenders, he should be getting into physical battles, he should be winning balls in the air, because really, if you want to play him as a lone forward in a 4-3-3 type shape, he should be doing that. But that's not the player he is. No. So I think it is key then, if Hibs can find a system with two up front that allows someone else to do those more classic centre forward things and give that to the team, and allow Stokes to be the dangerous player who floats and has a free role and can pick up the ball anywhere that he feels is going to hurt the defence and the opposition.
Well, so if he's tracking back, if he's chasing, say against Hearts for example, Cowie gets the ball and breaks forward and Stokes tracks him back, and Hibs get the ball, where's the ball going for there? Because Stokes is now on the edge of his own box, because he's been forced to track back a midfielder.
And you have to ask the question of, is that the best use of his energy?
No, 100%.
If you then get an opportunity to break in the last 20 and Stokes get played through and he's knackered because he's been chasing up and down the line all day,
exactly.
There's only so much energy and only so many legs to go around. You do have to conserve it, and you do have to ration it for the areas and the times you want people to use it, and I think that's always been the question with Anthony Stokes, is how is he best utilised. And he is a bit of a luxury player in certain respects, but if you get the end product, it doesn't even cross your mind as to whether he's a luxury, because he's on the score sheet.
I think at times the frustration for Stokes comes for that he can have an 8 out of 10, a 9 out of 10, and then a 3 out of 10 or a 4 out of 10. That's where the frustration comes for Hibs fans with him. If you can, I would swap that occasional 8-9 for 7s.
But then that's
7s
not,
every week.
But that's not really the nature of being a game winner and a game changer.
No, but then
if you're a 7 all the time, you're a holding midfielder. If you see what I mean.
But then he's more often than not going to contribute than being superb for one game and off the boil for maybe 2 or 3. Mm-hmm. I'd rather he was consistently involved. But with somebody like Stokes, who's got, he's not a Lewis Stevenson who comes in, gets his head down, does his work and goes home type guy. We all know that Stokes is a bit different on the field and off the field. It kind of plays in with the maybe not, well, we don't know what he's like as a person, but we've always had those players like Riordan, O'Connor, Griffiths, who weren't just turn up, smile and wave. They were players who like to...
They're slightly difficult.
They enjoy themselves on the park just as much as they enjoy themselves off the park.
But they've got an edge to them.
Aye, and they've got a bit of character as well. They're no bland and boring, and they just turn up, wave and go away. So getting a system that really focuses on getting the best out of Stokes is the most important thing, and I think we'll see movement in January with regards to that, because a fit and firing Stokes is going to be key, as Lennon says, if we want to be challenging up the top end of the league.
Okay, that's an interesting place to leave it on Hibs, because we will pick up pretty quickly there in the Derby preview, I think, because that's where a lot of focus is going to go, is how Hibs score goals at Tynecastle. So let's leave it there for now. You happy with that, Craig, on Hibs?
Aye.
Happy, Sean?
Think so.
Cool, right. I'm glad that you're both in a good mood, because soon you're going to be at each other's throats as we go through yet another Derby preview. Right, so thank you very much for staying with us on Monday Night Football on Radio Saltaire. Welcome back to Monday Night Football on Radio Saltaire. We're now going to start to talk about the Edinburgh Derby. There's somebody at the door.
Hello?
Hi there.
Ho, ho, ho! Merry Christmas!
Apparently it's Santa Claus.
Hello, I've just been making my rounds around the world, dropping off presents to all the little children. I wanted to come in here to Radio Saltire, just to say Merry Christmas and thank you for providing such a good show and podcast for the year.
Are you a listener, Santa?
I am. I try to be impartial, but I keep up with both Hearts and Hibs. I just wanted to come in to give you your presents also. There you go, Sam. There you go, Craig.
I don't know about you,
Thank
Craig,
you.
but it looks like it's beautiful. So happy with that.
Unfortunately, Mark and Scott don't get presents this year. They are on the naughty list. Also with Danderhall Hibs. Danderhall Hibs, please be a bit nicer on Hibs.net and tune in weekly for the weekly show. Anyway, I must be going now. Plenty more houses to go to. Just keep up the good work, okay?
Thanks very much,
Enjoy
Santa.
your Christmas. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Santa, or Brian Blessed. Or kind of weirdest thing. This studio doesn't even have a chimney. Sean, I can't believe you were at the toilet. Ken, what you just missed?
What?
You'll never believe it. Craig, tell him.
Santa. As in Santa Claus.
Santa Claus
Oh,
was in
Jolly
here.
St. Nick was in here.
Just
Yeah.
had a wee pop in while I was at the
Just had
toilet.
a wee pub. Well, as you said, if you listen to the podcast, you'll hear him. He was doing his rounds.
I'm not believing that.
Well, that's why you never got left a present, because you don't have any Christmas spirit.
I'm pretty sure there's more chance of Hibs winning the derby than Santa Claus being in the studio.
Well, Craig, it puts him in a dodgy position because he may find out later that he's just jinxed his team. So let's get into that and out of the madness that just happened there that we definitely should have edited but didn't because we've all got cabin fever. The Edinburgh Derby at Tynecastle, the first Edinburgh Derby in front of the new Tynecastle main stand at the new. It just feels like a new stadium. It's weird.
It's
that it isn't a
Tynecastle
new
Park
stadium.
now, isn't it, as
It
well?
is
It's back to
indeed.
being Tynecastle Park.
Yeah, Tynecastle Park,
Just so the song works now.
basically.
Aye.
How are we feeling generally ahead of it? Before we get into the specifics of the teams and everything, I want to gauge confidence level and I want to see if it changes over the 20 minutes or so that we discuss the teams. Sean, on a scale of 0 to 100, where does your confidence level sit right now?
70, 75?
Was it higher before Saturday's game?
Yes and no. The,
Well, thanks for your punditry.
yeah. I think straight after the game it was probably higher because everyone was on a huge high. There's no other way to say it. But I think when the realism kind of kicked in, it probably was about that level.
Okay.
I think, as we touched on earlier, yesterday's game was a hard game to manage. The weather conditions really played a factor that you couldn't allow for. So I think I was about 70-75 from before the game yesterday.
Okay.
I'm still there.
That's a long-winded way of saying it stayed about the same. Craig.
I can leave. You can get Santa back if you want.
He's got better banter than you, anyway.
Banter clause, brilliant. Craig, where is your confidence level?
Last week, after the week that we'd had, and then the Sunday that Hearts had had, mine was tumbling down sharply. And then I remembered that the last time I felt like that was when I'd actually been sat in the main stand and watched Hearts scud Motherwell 6-0 before proceeding to play Hibs a few days later. I can't remember if that was the first game or the replay. Must have been the first game.
Yeah, I believe so.
So I think, obviously I had to be the impartial one on Monday when I was hosting, talking about the game.
Mm-hmm.
But when you look back on reflection, that was Hearts, every player bang on their day. Celtic, every player bang off their day. You're not going to get a performance like that again. I don't think so soon after it. And also, the thing for me is that now, the tides. I don't want to be this one saying the tides turned. Do you know what I mean? It's now, the green half of the city, blah blah blah. However, in past years, Hearts were always the team that I felt had the upper edge because they had players who knew how to win a derby. Mm-hmm. They had players who knew how to manage derby games, whereas now I feel we have that. So I'd probably say I'm sitting about the same as Sean, maybe about 70-75%.
Okay, fair
That
enough.
was a
I think
long-winded way of saying that.
But I actually made a point.
I think that's a fair representation of exactly where we all sit at this moment in time. So let's deal with the actual teams. And I want to, rather than focusing on each team at a time, I thought there were specific areas of the park that we could concentrate on, because this feels to me like a bit of sort of an attack versus defence type derby, and that I feel that Hearts are a team who are very, very solid defensively, have found their feet there, as the 4 clean sheets in the last 4 games testifies, but are a team who are erratic in front of goal. And as Craig mentioned, against Celtic everything went right and they fashioned a lot of chances and took a lot of chances, but equally failed to score against a poorer St Johnstone team at the weekend, have failed to put teams like Hamilton and Ross County to the sword at Tynecastle in the not too distant future. Hibs, on the other hand, are a team who tend to find the goals. They're not always necessarily as clinical as they should be, as we've mentioned numerous times, but as we saw yesterday at Easter Road, they find a way to goal a lot of the time, albeit Neil Lennon's still juggling with his options up front, but defensively sometimes leave themselves a bit of work to do and can give themselves a mountain to climb now and again. So I'd quite like to focus on just the sort of attack versus defence on both sides, because I do feel that Hearts' area of strength is their defence, Hibs' area of strength is their attack, and vice versa. So let's start with the positives for both sides. Let's start with Hearts' defence and Hibs' attack, and I want to start particularly with Hibs' attack because that's where we left off the first part. Firstly, Craig, what attack are you expecting Neil Lennon to line up on Wednesday night?
I don't know. I can't see us lining up the same as we did at Easter Road.
Okay.
Against Hearts, purely because Tynecastle's a lot tighter, and I don't think you can. If we play 5 across the midfield, to me that'll indicate that Lennon's playing for a draw, and maybe to try and nick something against the run. Well, maybe not against the run of play, but a counter attack or whatever. Because we're not going to get as much luck in the wide areas as we did in the game at Easter Road, because there's not a lot of space for the Hearts defence to be stretched. Like watching the game last week, Michael Smith, as you spoke about on Monday, it was almost like Berra had his best game because Michael Smith could go and do all the things that Berra doesn't want to do. Go into the channels, come short and meet the attackers. Whereas Berra is, in my opinion, is very suspect on the turn. He does not want to be running towards his own goal. So for that, I think, as much as neither Shaw nor Stokes deserve to be dropped, I think purely for the energy that he'll give, I think Simon Murray will come back in.
Okay, so you mentioned though that you thought Stokes was undroppable to an extent. So does that mean Murray and Stokes tandem up front then for you? Or does Stokes move wide? Or
my own team, like me personally, I would go 4-4-2 in this game,
right,
and just go at them. I don't, I see like the last game at Easter Road. We were very, very comfortable in that game. We got the goal early on, and we never recreated much after it, but we were in control of that midfield. Hearts never bought, and the Hearts couldn't trouble us. So it's, but then you temper it with who comes out in midfield. I would be inclined to put either McGinn or McGeoch on the left, and have Boyle on the right.
So keep the similar personnel, but reshape slightly.
And I think that when you look at the way the team will have to line up, because we've not got a right back, because both Gray and Whittaker I know Gray was back on the bench yesterday, but it might be a bit too soon to bring him back in. If we can have a team that's almost like asymmetric, that's slots into a 3 when we're attacking, with Stevenson going a wee bit further forward and Boyle being able to drop back and cover the right half if need to, I think that would be our best chance in having Stokes and Murray up front, playing off, obviously, Murray getting the ball and holding it up for Stokes to come in and feed off in those, like you say, those areas between defence and midfield.
Okay, just before we go into the Hearts defence, your confidence level of 70-75%, how much of that comes from a confidence that Hibs will score at Tynecastle?
I don't see why we won't score at Tynecastle.
Okay, where will the goal come from in your opinion? As in, what is the key to Hibs potentially scoring multiple times at Tynecastle?
Getting at the full-backs and getting balls in the box. I think that the goal for the last time came from Barker getting down the right hand side, finding Murray in the box, obviously it might have been a bit fortuitous with the nutmeg, and then just rifling the shot past the keeper. You know, one thing that we have been doing a lot in recent games is, you look at the Rangers game, you know, attacking off the wide areas. Barker hit the post twice. There was a number of balls flashed across the box that no one was on the end of, and I think that with it being a derby, you'll get players naturally wanting to give that extra, you know, go that extra yard, take that chance at maybe getting themselves hurt in those areas where the ball, you know, you want a ball across the 6-yard box, you want your striker to be in there winning it. Sometimes there's not quite the urge to go for it, whereas in this game, you know, the rewards are there for everybody to see.
Okay, happy with that on Hibs attack, Craig?
Mm-hmm.
Right, Sean, Hearts defence, it's been pretty settled. It's been, apart from the Celtic game really, which was actually a bit of a departure, it's been about as settled as any other area of the team has been for Hearts all season really. There's likely, based on the end of the game yesterday, to be a little bit of an alteration in the left back area again, in that Michael Smith seemed to pull up with what Craig Levein later reported as a calf injury late in the game. So it seems like potentially that the back four will revert back to Brandon at left back, but 4/5 of the back four, I would assume, will stay exactly the same as it was yesterday. And as we say, Brandon did play in that left back slot at Tynecastle against Celtic in Hearts' best performance of the season. How confident are you in that back five?
Probably more confident than Michael Smith playing at left back.
Okay.
Purely because I feel Jamie Brandon's composure and confidence on the ball, especially using his weak foot, will provide more of an attacking outlet to take the pressure off the defence a lot of the time, and help try and pin Hibs back a bit more, especially if they do have issues at the right back position. I feel like with Jamie Brandon playing left back, it's an opportunity to try and exploit that more than we would get from Michael Smith playing. I think technically Michael Smith's probably a better defender, but Jamie Brandon for that type of game might be better suited to play in that.
Okay. You've already had a slightly veiled dig at Mark earlier about his comment last Monday about Hearts' defensive bubble bursting. How confident are you that Hearts can keep this clean sheet run going? That there's another clean sheet in the offing for Hearts on Wednesday night?
There's definitely there's going to be more of a test to it than there was yesterday. That's undoubted. I think the biggest thing is Hibs have somewhat of a chaos factor at times with the speed they can get down either wing with Barker and Boyle. That sometimes it just takes one slip, especially in the wintry conditions, one slip from a fullback, one slip from a centre half, and that pace can exploit you. So there's definitely going to be more of a test there, but I do think if there's been a game in the past since we've been doing the show that we're better set up to get a clean sheet against Hibs, I can't remember it. This has to be the time where we get the shot out and we can capitalise at the other end, which is going to be, you would think, the harder thing, which I'm sure we're going to touch upon.
Okay, so same question as I asked Craig there then. Of your 70-75% confidence level, how much of that comes from the solidity in defence?
I would say 60% of that is probably just John McLaughlin on his own.
Okay.
And I know that very well could come back to bite me at this point, but he has been such a figure in us getting that clean sheet record that we've got just now. Even when you go to when BBC finally put up highlights, I'm sure you'll be able to see the St Johnstone game, comes for a cross, decides to leave it, gets given as a corner for some unknown reason, and you're thinking, here we go, here's the sucker punch. They swing the ball in, good header, he manages to pull out a very, very good save to tip it over the bar. That's the type of save we haven't had from keepers recently. That's just a solidity that just when you think it's going to go wrong, things aren't going our way, he manages to pull it out the bag.
Well, equally, there were a couple of moments in the wind and the conditions yesterday that looked like shaky goalkeeping moments, and potentially there were a couple of balls that came for him, maybe should have got more on and didn't, which in itself you could say, well, surely this shouldn't breed confidence. But the fact that he simply shrugged them off, and the next time the ball came and gathered easily, whereas in previous eras there have been Hearts goalkeepers, I'm trying not to refer to Jack Hamilton by name, but you know if Jack Hamilton made a mistake of that nature, the next time he's coming for the ball, it's in his head. Whereas McLaughlin, as the more experienced goalkeeper, does seem to shrug it off, and he's able to just continue to do the things that make him a good goalkeeper.
He's just got confidence in his ability. There's not that fragile persona that has been with a lot of goalkeepers before. You can go back to keepers like Tepe Moylan and people like that it can really have an effect on you when you're so... Modern day football, the keepers, the majority of the time they are in the game, it's with the ball at their feet. Very few times are you actually called upon to do goalkeeping duties. So when it is few and far between, if you make a muck up on one, you can fixate on it so much because you might not see the ball for another 15 minutes. Mm-hmm. I think John McLaughlin's in a position where even if there is something that doesn't quite work out, it doesn't have to be a full big blown up mistake. That one wee thing going slightly wrong, he goes, well, that's not going to happen again, as opposed to, oh, what if I do that again? So that breeds confidence throughout the back line, and I think we're seeing that just now.
Right,
I just hope it continues.
I think we've had enough positives for now. Let's get into the nitty gritty of some negatives. Craig, how concerned are you at the mix-ups that seem to happen relatively commonly in the Hibs backline? They're not losing a huge amount of goals in individual games, but they are consistently losing, a goal a game, and a lot of them, some of them, you hold your hands up, you say great bit of play. Equally, when I cast my mind back to a lot of the goals that I've seen Hibs concede this season, a lot of them you think that could have very easily been stopped by an individual performing better or the structure of the defence holding up to scrutiny. How concerned are you that Hibs backline does look like conceding a goal a game at the moment?
Well, it's when you look at that run of games that we had in the week, plus Ross County, we've conceded 9 in our last 4. Now, for a team that I've championed for so long how good our defence is, I believe that we have one of the best defences in the country. It doesn't help when there's no consistency. One week it's Effie at centre back with Hanlon, then McGregor's back in, so Ambrose is pushed out wide, and then you get Whittaker coming on at half time a couple of games in a row. Fontaine's still injured, Gray's in then out, Whittaker's in then out. It's not good, and it's not breathing confidence for the goalkeeper either. Because I think if you look at the goals that we have conceded, I would proportion probably 50% of the blame. 50% of the goals we conceded solely down to the goalkeeper. The 2 goals against Rangers absolutely were his fault. The second goal against Aberdeen also, I believe, was his fault, where he's fallen far too easily. And to be honest, I've tried to erase the memory of the Aberdeen game out of my mind. But he's obviously suffering from a severe lack of confidence, and it's not helping that there's no one there pushing him, because as much as I don't rate Laidlaw as a first choice goalie, when him and Marciano were working off each other, Marciano was performing a lot better. So it does worry me, because I feel that this game's going to be settled on who scores most. Because I think
every game's settled by who scores most.
Because I believe that we'll have too many chances that we won't score, and we're just not good enough at the back at the moment to keep a clean sheet. That's where I feel it's going to come from, and whether we can be clinical. Like you said, yesterday could have been 4 or 5. The Rangers game should have been 3 or 4. Celtic, we could have nicked it. You look at the games over the season, there's games where we should, we're due to give someone's going to get a scalp. Someone's going to get a good, even the game against Kilmarnock away, we got played off the park and came away with a 3-0 win. But the games where we're playing teams off the park, we're getting Hamilton, sucker punch. We're not being able to make the breakthrough. Mm-hmm. So, whether this leathering comes on Wednesday, I doubt it.
It is interesting because it's, as we spoke about a wee bit on Monday, that the strikers are coming in for criticism in games where, yes, they maybe should have scored 3 or 4, but they did score 1 or 2, and it's no their fault that they couldn't keep 1 or 2 out at the other end.
Yeah.
So it becomes this vicious circle of everyone is at fault, but equally everyone's deserving of praise. And it's never quite clear where to apportion the blame with Hibs, and that's not to say you need to have a blame culture, but equally it is nice to know, right, he was responsible for that, and that's why I think people have been so negative about Marciano, because he's one where you can clearly see when he's at fault. Whereas the other things, it's not quite clear. Did we lose that game because we didn't score enough? Did we lose it because we conceded too many? I mean, ultimately it's a culmination of all.
Yeah.
But it is nice to be able to say, well, our defence just isn't good enough, or our attack just isn't good enough, or whatever. So on the defence, you've mentioned already that you would like to see the asymmetric structure. Firstly, what defence would you line up with for Wednesday night? And secondly, do you think there is anything Lennon can do, in particular with the derby in mind, to instantly give a wee bit more solidity to the defence? Or is that a stupid question, because if he could have done it, he would have done it already?
I think, obviously I said I'd go 4-4-2, but I believe that Lennon should potentially look at going 3 at the back. With 3 centre halves, and drop in one of Hanlon, McGregor or Ambrose and putting Porteous in there.
Right.
I believe that this game is tailor made for someone like Porteous, who, despite only being 19, 20, despite being relatively inexperienced, I think going up against somebody like Lafferty, he would relish that challenge, and that he will. In defence, we're not tough enough. And what I mean by that is we're no nasty or whatever, but we've not got a player who would charge through his granny to get to a cross ball and get rid of it. Whereas I believe that that's what the kind of player that Porteous is.
So you suggesting almost like a man marking task for him then, and go and match up
Well,
physically with Lafferty, follow him where he goes, and then actually you've still got the 2 other centre halves and the 2 wing backs to deal with any other threats.
I wouldn't necessarily man mark him as such, and put a leash on him and try and follow him everywhere he goes, but certainly when it comes to things like set pieces, because there is going to be, both teams are going to shell it at times. There's no denying it, because I don't think the pitch is good enough for both teams to have a quality 90-minute game of football. And so there is going to be teams where there is going to be times where both teams are going to go long, and
there is the pressure as well. There's the element of, there will be times in the game when each team is maybe on the rope slightly, and you think, I'm not being the one that makes the mistake that gives this ball away in a dangerous position, so let's play percentage and get it out of the danger area.
And there's going to be times where, because I think if Hearts go long, it's going to, you're going to have the battle with, say, somebody like Porteous and Lafferty, or even McGregor and Lafferty. McGregor's no shy about getting involved in tussles like that, whereas with Hearts, if we go long, it's going to come straight back, because neither Murray nor Shaw nor Stokes are going to win a ball against Berra and there. Berra will lap that up all day long. So it's key for us. It's going to be key is that when we do go long, is that we're picking up the second ball. We've got the midfield anticipating when the ball's going to come back, because too often we've seen it. We've shelled it up to Riordan, we've shelled it up to Fletcher, we've shelled it up to Cummins, and your players like Augustin, Zaliukas in the past, thank you, take that back.
Well, that was an interesting point that Scott brought up prior to this chat about Hibs potentially going to a more direct style of play, because that's what worked at Tynecastle last time. The massive difference is Hibs had Grant Holt last time.
Yeah.
If Matt Levicius had more of an impact, was more of a first team player at Hibs, I could see that being an option. With him not being there, for me it would be utter madness if Hibs tried to play a more direct style of play, because as you say, Christophe Berra would absolutely relish that 90 minutes.
But that's where I think we would need to be picking up on the second balls. So when Berra's headering it back, is Bartley in there picking it up, is McGinn in there picking it up and driving at the defence. If we're just going to shell it, Berra's going to header it, and we're just going to stand and watch it come over us, and then McGregor will shell it, and then, do you know what I mean? It'll just become like a game of head tennis at times.
When you stand and watch it, try not to turn directly away from the microphone on a radio show. But no, well, that's going to be the really interesting thing, because if Hearts do go back to more of a structure like in the Celtic game, actually Hearts gave up a lot of first balls against Celtic. There's a lot of times where balls were knocked in the air and Hearts actually either just put in a token effort or said, you win it, and then Hearts went for second balls, and that was the most effective performance I've seen of a Hearts team in a number of years, at battling for, scrapping for and winning second balls. it'll be really interesting if Wednesday night is a game of two teams looking to do the same thing. Two teams saying, well, we'll make an effort for the first ball to put you off, but actually what we're all about is snapping in on those second balls, because then it becomes a midfield battle. And in that scenario, I think up until the Celtic game, everyone listening on both sides of the divide would have said Hibs will win a midfield battle. Hearts gave themselves a bit of a blueprint of how to win a midfield battle on last Sunday against Celtic. So I think there is that question mark of, could this be much more of a game if that is the way it goes this time?
Well, one thing I wanted to mention was that Scott obviously put on about you press Celtic high and force them into mistakes.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that'll work against Hibs, because we're not a team that'll muck about with it at the back, and
you are remembering Effie Ambrose plays for Hibs, eh?
That's irrelevant. That's another one of these Effie haters. It'll only be that when he's triple back flipping up past the stand.
You really have erased Aberdeen from your memory.
But anyway, the high press I don't feel is something that will work against us, because we're not afraid to shell it. If we're under pressure at the back, that ball's going diagonal, it's going anywhere. Whereas Celtic try to be too cute and clever and like, oh no, do you know what, we're playing under the fantastic Brendan Rodgers. We'll try and
plan B.
We'll ping it from centre back to Scott Brown to left back to Scott Brown and try and find a way to get through. Whereas, you know what, if McGregor's not the greatest with the ball at his feet anyway, so if he's finding himself under pressure, that ball's going diagonal.
Okay, Sean, just a wee bit on the weaknesses from Hearts' perspective. It's pretty clear Hearts don't score enough goals. I mean, that's why the 4-0 result against Celtic was so ridiculously received, because not just was it an emphatic end to their winning streak, but it was 4 goals by a Hearts team that looked against poor opposition like it would be impossible to score 4 goals. I mean, this is a Hearts team that had stuttered to try and break down Hamilton and Ross County at Tynecastle, and suddenly were exploding against Celtic. A lot of that was down to how much Celtic opened up. Is there a fear that because, as Craig says, Hibs won't necessarily hold themselves to being so expansive at times, and because it is a derby, will be happy at times with simply being compact and hard to break down, in the confidence that they'll likely nick something on the break? Is there a concern there that Hearts, this could be one of those games where Hearts huff and puff and fail to break the deadlock?
Very possibly. I think for Hearts to get a win from this game, the key thing will be the midfield runners. I think we saw it in the Celtic game. Don Cowie, Milinkovic, I'm technically classing as a midfielder here. Them breaking the lines and getting past Kyle Lafferty can be a huge thing.
Well, Ross Callaghan was the most telling example of that for the penalty.
Whether or not Ross Callaghan is going to be fit is the big part, but yes, he can definitely factor in that as well. Whether he can win us more penalties, we'll see, because I'm no confident with Ross Callaghan finishing when he's getting in those positions, as we've seen from the 2 big opportunities he's had so far. But I think everyone knows that's going to be the biggest issue for Hearts. We're more confident of keeping a clean sheet than we are of scoring 1 goal, which is a bit of a worry. But at the same time, I do think, especially the atmosphere we had at Tynecastle in the last game there, the players that we've got who are more bedded in now compared to when the first derby came around, and the atmosphere that was at Easter Road that night, I think we're much better suited to getting a result and getting a goal in this game than we were previously. I think Kyle Lafferty knows more of what it's all about. I think Xmas being out the team, if he has an involvement, there's now a desperation for him to make his mark and try and get back in the team. I think it's just one of those that it is a toss of the coin at this point, I would say. I just hope that when Hearts do get the chances, that they can put them away in a clinical fashion like they did against Celtic, as opposed to the somewhat ponderous finishing we have had at times.
To take it in a slightly cynical direction of, if you had to put your money on it, how many goals would you expect Hearts to score? So I'm not asking for how many do you hope or how many do you think Hearts could score. I'm asking for, if you actually had to make a prediction and put your own hard-earned cash on it now, how many goals would you predict Hearts would score?
Okay, well, I would just go with my prediction for the game just
No,
now. 'cause
no,
it's
just from a Hearts perspective, is one goal all you're likely to get? Are Hearts likely to relish the atmosphere enough that actually 2 goals becomes the likely outcome, or is it actually more likely that Hearts could struggle against a very compact Hibs team who will likely go out to try and not make mistakes, and Hearts could just fail to score?
I think the biggest thing would be where that first goal came in the match. We saw it against Celtic. It came at a sweet spot that Hearts could then capitalise on that and build from there. If Hearts were to score 20-25 minutes into the game, I could see there maybe being 2 or 3. I think probably in all of the predictions rolling around in my head, the most I see Hearts scoring is 2.
Okay.
I think if Hearts are going to get the win, it's either going to be a 1-0 or a 2-1.
I think that's a really interesting point that you brought up there, in that a lot of the time in discussions about predictions for matches and big games like this, no enough credence is given to when things happen rather than will things happen or might they happen. It plays such a massive part, because had Hearts, for example, against Celtic failed to score in the first half, that second half would have been completely different.
Because you get to half time being like, oh, we've got to half time.
Yeah,
And
but
then-
you're
and
still,
then Celtic come out when
you know,
renewed.
you're still 1 goal away from a crisis, being
Yeah.
1-0 down and on the end of a hammering. Getting the goals at the right times is massive, and for me, looking at it, trying to take my maroon tinted glasses off, I think this is a game where Hearts getting the first goal for Hearts is absolutely vital, because Hearts are not a team who are well accustomed or adept at breaking down a team who simply doesn't want to concede today. I think Hearts struggle with that. If they can score first, if Hearts can nick a goal on the counter, or if they can score from a set piece or just a great bit of individual play, then Hibs have to open up, because Hibs can't settle for a meek 1-0 and losing the unbeaten run that they've been on against Hearts. That can't happen, so Hibs have to open up, and at that point then, like you, I would confidently say Hearts can score again. Hearts could even score 3 goals. Going into a game where it's going to be a 50-50 battle, there's no danger I would put money on Hearts scoring 3 times. So all comes down to that first 20-25 minutes of the game, what happens there, and less of a superficial, oh, you know, you'd like to have 60% possession at the end of the first 25 minutes, or you'd like to have this many shots on goal. None of that matters. It all matters about the meaningful contributions to the scoreline. If Hearts get their noses in front, then I think obviously their chances to win the game improves, but actually the chances of it being a high scoring, exciting affair improve as well. I think if Hibs got their nose in front, they would be quite right to say, we don't really believe that you'll
want a
score
goal,
against
come
us
and
now.
try and get one.
Aye. And then it becomes and Neil Lennon's teams, although they do get a lot of plaudits for playing really expansive football, we do know that in games like a derby, Neil Lennon is happy to sit in and say, break us down if you think you can, because that is what he did at Tynecastle in the Scottish Cup, and Hearts couldn't break them down, and it did ultimately work. Let's get to predictions on that then, because ultimately it's all good and well to speculate if Hearts do this, if Hibs do that. But then it's a different question of, will they do that? And do you genuinely believe in your heart of hearts that they can do that? So, who wants to predict first?
I will go first.
Okay,
if,
go on then.
Craig's no man enough to step up.
You're the home team. You should be.
I have put this down as a prediction of a 1-0 Hearts.
Okay. Scorer?
I think I'll go for him as scorer, but I think he'll either score it or assist it. I think it could be a coming of age for coming of age, he's very young, but Tony McDonald, I think could play a part in that. It's a brilliant stage for a young player to go and make his mark and properly announce his name on the stage.
Plus, it's one of those when you said his name and I thought, oh, will he play? But then it may be that Hearts have such a positive options. He absolutely has to play.
I think he could either play from the start and make an impact there, or get a goal early on, or he makes a late appearance and pops up with something.
Okay, Craig, prediction. You've got that wee mischievous grin on your face.
Because Nick was talking about it on Monday, and because I've seen stuff flashing up during the week that it's been
6-2.
18 years to the day or whatever for the Millennium Derby. Like I say, I feel that some team's going to get a doing. And I
But
don't
you
know
said
why.
earlier, will it be Wednesday? Probably not.
I know, but see now that I'm actually, because obviously I need to be quite clever when I'm talking about the game. Now I can just revert back.
There's
to
a first time for everything.
I can revert back to full blown Hibs fan.
Didn't he get inside your head too much, Craig? We know it's a dangerous place.
And also, when you look back, traditionally games over this sort of late December to start of January period, they are quite exciting games.
Well, they do tend to
You
bring
look
up
at the-
memorable results,
you look
like
at the
4-all and
the Millennium Derby.
Yep.
You've got the 3-2 game where Dean Shields lost the plot.
Yep.
So you know everything's there.
There are mad results that you would never predict would happen at any other time of year.
Wednesday-
They do seem to come up at festive
Wednesday
period,
night
yeah.
under the floodlights, 2 days after Christmas. Majority of people not working. Got to be on the sauce all day. You know what I mean? The atmosphere's going to be. It's going to be brilliant.
Are you going to say the words 3-0 or
No, I'm going to say 3-1.
3-1? Okay.
Called it.
Goal scorers?
Don't care who scores for Hearts because it'll be immaterial by the time it goes in. For Hibs, Boyle to find some composure, Stokes, and we'll go McGregor for a set piece.
Key man? Because if it's a 3-1, then that
Exactly,
would
I will
suggest
be
fairly
shouting-
dominant.
I
So
will be
who's
shouting key man if we win that.
so who would be the key man? Who would lead to such dominance
Stokes.
in a 50-50
It's got
game?
to be Stokes. Stokes is on. I believe that if Stokes is on form and up for it for the start, there's no Hearts player that can live with him.
I can't believe after all that chat earlier, you've not went for FA to get a goal.
I'd love to see nothing. Honestly, I genuinely think.
Oh, that-
we can assume that you'd love to see any Hibs player score,
Ambrose
right?
backflipping in front of the Roseburn
Just
stand.
so the one sort of final question I want to ask is: are there any surprises that you anticipate in the lineups at all? So. On the Hearts side, Sean, we know Hearts are nursing a few players with injuries just now. We know that Callaghan is a big question mark, but we know that Jamie Walker and Arno Doom, who have been out longer, are really potentially big risks. Jamie
Cochrane's
Walker,
bottled it.
oh aye, of course. Jamie Walker got 20 minutes on Saturday.
Yep.
Do you expect him to start?
I am unsure at this point. The fact that
Would you
Craig
be
Leveins
surprised?
came out and said that Jamie Walker's leaving at the end of the season. I don't know if that's so here's his opportunity to leave a mark on Hearts before he goes, or if it's, well, he's going so he's not going to feature much. I'm not entirely sure. I would say, especially with the lack we've got of options in wider positions, probably he will start.
Okay. Would you be surprised to see Arno Doom start?
I would, because he's never won a derby in Maroon.
I think it depends on the condition of the pitch at the time.
Okay, in terms of the risk with his fitness.
Yep.
Fair enough. Okay, are there any other names that you think could come out of the blue and feature for Hearts, or has that list already been explored over the injury crisis of the last 4 weeks?
Most likely, I don't want to see Rafael Jelak on the team sheet,
Right,
even
okay.
on the bench.
That's a negative to end on. Okay, Craig, any surprises that you expect to see? Is there any names that could come out of left field to be thrown in here?
Just potentially Porteous, I think.
Okay.
Swanson's now backing in the squad, but I can't see this being a game for him to start in. But no, apart from that, maybe Slivka in. So Slivka, Swanson or Porteous, but I can't see any. I know I completely contradict myself by saying that Porteous should play and then I don't think he will play, but
Right, okay.
those would be the names.
Perfect, lads. Thank you very much for sacrificing a big chunk of your Christmas Eve for joining me.
Massive chunk.
Yeah, but a lot of that was just telling really bad jokes and doing Australian accents. We will be back again next week in some form. We've not actually decided that yet. Next Monday's also
New Year's Day.
Yeah, New Year's Day. So we'll put something together. We will need to do a Derby reaction show. When we'll do that, after enough of us have sobered up enough to do it. If anyone's interested in my prediction, I think it's got a draw written all over it. It'll either be 0-0 or 1-0. But
there's the whole
what
sitting
do I
thing,
know? No, I do actually think it's one of those games where both teams might end up saying, well, sort of happy.
Usually when I do a
prediction
prediction on the show, it actually comes in and I regret not putting a bet on it. So
Well, there's a first time for everything.
3-1 Boyle first goal.
Okay, right. We're going to leave you there. Have a very Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. As I say, we'll be back next week to wish you a Happy New Year again. But we don't know quite when or in what format. So just keep your eyes peeled. And there is obviously the interview with Ian Murray that we mentioned at the start of the show. We're going to play you out with a clip of that now. This will be about sort of 15-20 minutes of it now. But there is a full hour and a half, Craig?
It's about an hour and a half, aye.
Roughly an hour and a half interview available on our Podbean and our iTunes feed, the Monday Night Football feed. Please get on there if you want to hear Ian Murray's story and Craig act like a total fanboy for an hour and a half.
No, I didn't for an hour and a half. There was a couple of wee bits where
45 minutes? Okay, well,
Yeah.
It's a day of compromise, so we will say 45 minutes. Right, perfect. Guys, thank you very much, and thank you at home for listening to Monday Night Football Christmas Day Special on Radio Saltaire. Goodbye.
Merry Christmas!
Ian, thanks very much for joining us. How's things with you just now? Can you tell us a bit, for the listeners who aren't aware, what you're up to these days?
Yeah, I'm over in Norway at the moment with an ex-Hibs player, Kevin Nicol, who went on loan from Hibs over there. Must have been about 12 years ago now. Done a wee spell, came back, had a couple of clubs back here part-time wise, and then had another opportunity to go over to Norway again, so he'd done that, and that's been him ever since. He has played for a few clubs over there and eventually ended up at a team just outside Oslo called Asker. It asked me to go over a couple of times in a roundabout way, maybe about a year and a half, just about a year and a half ago, 3/4, and wasn't quite right, but then he asked me again, and I went over to have a little look around and stuff like that, and I decided that I thought, you know what, I'll give it a little chance, and went over there, and that's been done. Our first season now, we've just finished, so first year's done. We'll go back again in January and start our second one.
How different is it for being, because obviously you were the main man at Dumbarton and St Mirren, how different is it now being the assistant?
It is different, there's no question about that. You're in a different role completely, different culture wise as well, different mentality of players, staff, supporters, club even. So there is a lot of changes, but ultimately the assistant's job doesn't change. You're there to help the manager as much as you can, voice your opinion on certain aspects that he needs help with, but ultimately it's his decision. No matter what you think, once a manager makes his choice of what he wants to do or how he wants to do something, and it might not be the same as how you would do it, then you have to back him. I'm very fortunate that probably because we're both from the same country, in a foreign country, we stick together pretty well, and we never have any issues really. You'll ask me things, I'll give him my opinion, but I have to be mindful as well that I'm in a new environment. It's not quite the same. We can't do the things we might do here over in Norway because the players are different. So it's tough, but it's a great learning experience for me, and I've learned a lot from him. He's really, really good, I have to say, and it's easy for me to sit here and say that about him, but he's meticulous in what he does. It's his passion, it's his job. He's 24/7 on it, so he's got a huge future in what he's going to do, and that could be with me or without me, we don't know, but as an individual he's very, very good, I have to say.
Well, that's excellent. It's nice to hear that. And obviously it's a bit like not a lot of Scottish coaches especially find themselves going abroad, and I guess like you say, it's easier probably for the two of you that you've got each other, and that you know each other. You've obviously spent time together at Hibs, but we'll go sort of back to the very start. For you, football wise, how was football always your main thing growing up?
Yeah, as a kid, of course. It's different again now from when I started out. It was your boys' club, your school, and that was kind of it. You might get divided in some places, but I was never a player at 10, 12, 13, 14 even to really catch the eye in terms of, you hear a lot of players at that age going down to Man United, West Ham United, Arsenal, Tottenham, and it's kind of gone a little bit younger now. I think you're getting like 7, 8-year-olds getting invited to the clubs now, which is just totally bizarre to me. But I was always quite steady, and I was always, always played for a decent boys' club. Always one of the better players at school. And it was about 15 I really started to maybe catch up with a couple of guys. And I think the biggest thing for me, I had the mentality to do it. I didn't at 16, 17. I didn't fall by the wayside. I didn't do it. I didn't want to do it. And I think you hear that with a lot of players. Everybody's heard that I could have done this, could have done that, and it's always the ifs, buts and maybes. But I think at that 16, 17 you really need a lot of guidance, and I don't mean by your parents pushing you into doing stuff. It's just the way you're kind of geared up to do something and how you approach it yourself. So I was very strong mentally in that side of it. And then obviously when I got my chance I went to Dundee United when I was 15. I left Hutchie Vale to go there, which again kind of showed in my own head I was quite strong, because that was a big decision for a 15-year-old to make. It might not sound to a lot of people, but to leave your boys' club with all your friends and suddenly go to Dundee United where you know nobody, and you just go and play in it was at the time it was like a West of Scotland Development League really. And that was really the first sort of professional environment I'd ever been in. I hadn't gone around clubs, and then from then it just progressed.
So how did your move to Dundee United initially come about? Obviously, playing for a club like Hutchie Vale, that's where a lot of talents came through for, especially in Scottish football over the years. How did your move to Dundee United exactly come about?
Yeah, I was. It was always an Edinburgh scout, and we used to train at Castlebury High School once a week. And it came from that really. They normally invite most players, must have maybe a school in Edinburgh, one in Glasgow, a couple in Dundee, whatever, for like a trial match up at Dundee. And so I went up for that, and after that game they wanted to sign me as a schoolboy form at the time it was, and for me that was fine, totally great, loved it, had a fantastic time at Dundee United, really good set up, good youth development at the time, probably the best in the country. It was kind of slowed down a wee bit for them, but they treat you really well. School holidays, you're always up there, work experience, went up there. And it was a great time, some good players, and from there they wanted me to go full time. And the rules back then were, if you sign a schoolboy form for whoever it is, and you don't, and they offer you a contract to go full time, and you don't sign it, they can withhold your registration for a year. And between the time where I wasn't quite sure if I wanted to go up to Dundee, to be honest, and live in Dundee, because I was still quite young for my age at that, 17 years old. I wasn't that mature, and I've always been quite a homebird anyway. And eventually decided I didn't want to go, so they withheld my registration for a year, which it sounds petty, but they were within their rights to do that. And in the meantime, Hibs had came in and offered me a contract as well, and that's sort of like finally on the coffin for Dundee United, if you like. It sounds so cliche, but the only team that you would really want to play for is the team you support. So for me it was a no-brainer. Sacrifice a year out to go to Hibs. So
did you know that? Were Hibs interested in you throughout that? Was that the start of that year when Dundee United held with us?
It's strange. Hibs had always sort of been around me and indicated that they'd always liked me and wanted to speak to me, but nothing really ever happened. For what I don't know why. I still don't know why. And then I remember it really clearly. I remember lying in my bed one afternoon, 16 or something, and Hibs phoned the house, and I was really obviously delighted. So I went down to Easter Road. Alan McLeish was the manager at the time, and I went down there. I just finished high school actually, so I was 17, and I went in to speak to Alan McLeish and Billy McNeill actually, who was director of football maybe at the time, and they offered me the contract and they told me to come and start tomorrow. So I was like straight away. No chance of getting my head around it, just thrown in the deep end, but probably the best way.
So how did it feel, obviously, like you say, as a lifelong Hibs fan? Pretty much I'd certainly done it, grew up dreaming of that moment of being asked to sign for the club. What did it actually feel like to you and to your family? Yeah,
it is a hard thing to describe, because I'd literally went from having a season ticket on the terrace and to not needing my season ticket anymore, because I knew my dad would be able to get a ticket now because I was going to go. Mm-hmm. And so it was quite bizarre. You're in a place where I was watching the guys I was going to be training with or hanging about with literally 2 or 3 months earlier. It was back then. It was like John Hughes, Barry LeVay, Sean Dennis, Brian Welsh, Paul Lovering, all these sort of guys. So that was the type of team it was. Just be relegated to the first division as well. So it was a club that was kind of trying to rebuild. But I think when someone like Alan McLeish and Billy McNeill, meet you and want you to come, it's a big thing for a young kid, and even for my dad, who went with me. We were always ecstatic, but it's sometimes you still have to pinch yourself when these things happen. But again, you have to take it in your stride, or you get left behind.
So what was your, obviously, because you joined Hibs in 1999, your first team debut wasn't that long after it, in early 2000. What was your sort of development like in the time for when you joined? Did your development kind of accelerate in that? Maybe 6 to 12 months. Yeah,
it did. It was a bizarre situation because of the contract with holding it Dundee United. I couldn't officially sign a contract at Hibs, so we had to predate the thing. But it wasn't really binding. I could have walked out any time. and I was still playing with Scotland at the time, under 16s I think, and I went away to I think it was maybe Belgium or something, I can't remember. Anyway, I had a really good tournament. It was a wee tournament. I had a really, really good tournament, and I remember Gordon Strachan phoned my house. He was the manager of Coventry, and he'd asked me to come down. Their scout had sent a report back or whatever. So I'd gone down there. I wasn't too sure what to do. They turned my head a little bit, and so I went down for the weekend, and then I came back up on the Monday morning. And I'll never forget, I remember being in the laundry room, folding the kit and stuff, and Donald Park, who was the youth manager, just casually folding with me, and he just asked me how was it, and I immediately panicked because I hadn't told Hibs I was going to, and I was like, oh, no, 17. He went, how was it? I went, oh, it was good. And that was kind of the end of conversation. And then again, it just shows you how much Hibs made me want, feel valued as that. McLeish wanted to come around my house, speak to mum and dad. There's a new contract. This is what we think. So and again, I was never going to leave Hibs, to be honest with you. Not at that age. I mean, I couldn't have gone to Dundee. No chance of going down to Coventry. So I signed a new contract, and as I say, I couldn't play for the year. But in fairness to Art McLeish, used to always say to me, if I was available for selection today, you'd be playing. But it's always something you think, oh, the manager's just trying to keep your head up, keep you going, blah, blah, blah. But to be fair to him, the first chance that he had the opportunity to give me, he gave me it. So I always remember that sometimes managers do tell you things just to keep you going, but he was true to his word.
So obviously, in a weird twist of fate, your debut was against Dundee United. Yeah. As we touched on, being a lifelong Hibs fan, like walking into the changing room and seeing your name, on the back of the shirt, which is something that many of us have dreamed of over the years. How big was that moment for you?
Yeah, even that came about bizarrely. Nothing seemed to be straightforward, because I think we were going to Trinidad pre-season. I'd been on the pre-season tour actually in the summer, and I was delighted to get on that, because I'd worked really hard in the summer. That summer, I'd worked really, really hard. Came back fit as I'd ever been, and I was in with the first team straight away. And I thought, that's good. And then I remember getting pulled in or read out in the squad that was going over to Denmark, which was great. Never played at all, but I was just delighted to be there. And then I had a really poor 4 months after that. I took a couple of wee niggles, injuries, nothing big, but just enough to set me back a wee bit. Confidence dipped a little bit, and I was poor. I don't know if I was maybe growing a little bit as well. It's just kind of hampers you, because it happened to me when I was 15. I had a wee poor 6 months, just couldn't really do anything right. And then the boys were going to Trinidad, and I was left out. I was really disappointed, because a few of the young guys were going. You had Alan Reid, Scott Bannerman, Emilio Bottiglieri, Tam McManus, and I wasn't going. So I was like, oh no, I don't believe this. This is a nightmare. And then 2 days before the trip, Pat McGinley pulls out, Frank Sosey pulls out. I get pulled in. So I'm going, I know I'm there kind of by default, but I'm still there. And then I think it was the second game, John Hughes came and said, Gaffer wants you at half time. We were warming up, so I went in. I just sat there. Gaffer's he's trying to pull a fast one on me. Gaffer don't want me. I'm just sitting there, and by hook or by crook, someone said I can't go on. The Gaffer's just looking at me, and you go on. Had a really good 45 minutes. Worked really hard. Last game of the tour I was starting again, worked really, really hard, and I went back and started the first league game. So by strange twist of fate, you get your little break, your little chance, and from then it was the development did accelerate, much quicker.
It was a pretty quick turnaround for you, signing with Hibs, going on the pre-season tour, and then getting your debut. You're training every day with players of the calibre of Mixu Patlainen, Frank Sosey, Russell Latape, even players like John Hughes would have still been there. For somebody who was, a relative novice still in the game, how did working with such experienced professionals day in, day out really help shape you and shape the way that you wanted to play football? There's no question. You're working with really good players. We're working international standard players who'd done so much in the game and demanded a certain level of training from you, demanded a level of performance. So you're kind of scared to, number one, let yourself down, let the players down, let the manager down. So you have to go in with the attitude all the time. You have to win. You have to win all the time. You have to stop the goal if you're a defender. You have to be the one that scores the goal if you're the attacker. Because if you don't do it, they'll tell you about it. They don't tiptoe around you. They're not going to give you any leeway on the pitch. After or out, on the changing room, they might give you a little bit of confidence and advice. But you learn by playing against them, and you learn by sometimes getting a harsh reality check. You might have a terrible session, but you realise how good a quality these players are. So I was very I always say I was very, very fortunate to grow up in a team that was so good, with so many good players. In some ways, it made it harder to break through, but in other ways, once I was through, it made it easier.